bring in Chris Matthews, the host of Hardball. Chris, of course, on days like today, nights like tonight, we think of the greatness of this man. We've lost a great American patriot, a great public servant, a senator, a warrior, a politician, imperfect, he'd be the first to admit. And as I was just saying, on the 9th anniversary of Teddy Kennedy's death from this same terrible brain cancer.
Wow. Well, I said this earlier tonight, and I still think it's the reason people love the gladiatorial aspect of politics, where it's really one against the other, and there's a real combat to it. And you look for guts, spiritual guts. You look for people that stick to what they believe and be their own person. And John McCain was always his own person. I mean, he wasn't a knee-jerk lefty or a knee-jerk righty. He didn't fit the mold, which was there for so many of these other politicians to just sort of slip into. He was always John McCain, and he could be disconcerting. You could love him one day and get really mad at him the next day because he wasn't there to make you like him. And you would love him on McCain-Feingold on campaign reform, and you may not like him on being hawkish. But he was always John McCain. What I found him to be a character out of the movies, in the sense that if you were to write a romantic movie about American politics and the U.S. Senate especially, and you wanted to have heroes in it, people that really stood out and had guts, profiles and courage, if you will, he would be a perfect candidate in real life for that romantic role. He was the classic U.S. Senator. If you ever want to grow up to be a senator, I think you'd want to grow up to be John McCain. You wouldn't grow up to be just one of the votes for either party. You'd want to be someone who everyone wondered about where they're going to go and how they're going to vote and what's their conscience going to lead them to. And I also like the fact that he was a statesman in the sense that even though he could be incredibly tough on his opponents and bitter at times, he really did stand up for his opponent, Barack Obama, in a couple of critical moments. One was when that woman in the crowd said that he was an Arab, and she meant that in the worst possible way of saying something. And McCain could have said, yeah, and just gone along with that sort of slur. It was a slur to her. And instead he said, no, he's a decent man. We just have to disagree. And, boy, that is so rare in politics today. He also gave a most wonderful testimonial to Barack Obama when they were going head-to-head about a couple of weeks before the election in 2008. He was at the Al Smith dinner. And I was there, and I remember I went back and dug it up. We showed it last night. I hope everybody gets to see it again. It was the most grand endorsement, not endorsement, that's not the right word, testimonial to his opponent that you don't hear in politics today. It was wonderful. And he did it knowing that he was much the underdog. As you know, Andy, 2.5 weeks before that election, the market was dropping and everything was going haywire, and he was paying the brunt of it. And I thought that was the best of John McCain.
And, Chris, the fact that he has still been a force in this last year, even while he's suffering from this brain cancer, fighting the cancer, certainly in his vote against the repeal of Obamacare last July 28th, but also a year ago, July 28th, 2017. But in his speech, that speech in July, in his statement after Helsinki, he has tried to hold the White House to account for the things that he, McCain, believes in.
Well, I don't want to say what everybody else is saying about life these days, but there was a quotient of decency in politics until recently, where you didn't make fun of your opponent's appearance, especially if you're a male and you're making fun of a woman's appearance or something as low down as that. And that was undone. You didn't make nicknames up about your opponents. You didn't drive them into the mud. You outpointed them, you out-argued them, you made your case, and you could do it aggressively, but you didn't diminish their very being. McCain was that old school, and I think he was beaten up in that 2000 election. They went after his family. They said he had a illegitimate daughter. It turned out he had obviously had it was someone from South Asia that he had adopted. He had said he had adopted, but they spread the rumors in South Carolina in that primary that it was his illegitimate daughter. They said his wife had drug problems. They were throwing everything at him. And he still stuck with in politics. He came back again after he almost got knocked off in the early going in 2008. He kept going and going, and he wouldn't quit. And I think that endurance that he showed over the Hanoi Hilton all those years, where he was just getting beat up and tortured and basically crippled and above his waist, and he just stuck with it and had a sense of humor. He was a tough guy. I think he had some bitterness, but he didn't let it drive him. I think he resented some people like W and people that didn't serve in Vietnam the way he did and didn't suffer the way he did, but seemed to come out on top. I'm sure he did. But as the public man, I think, was a hero. And a grand hero, as our colleague said earlier tonight. He has had a grandness to him, something out of the movies.
And you referenced that Al Smith dinner in 2008. Of course, a campaign year. You were there. We've got some of that tape. Let's play that testimonial to Barack Obama by his competitor, John McCain.
I don't want it getting out of this room, but my opponent is an impressive fellow in many ways. Political opponents can have a little trouble seeing the best in each other, but I've had a few glimpses of this man at his best, and I admire his great skill, energy, and determination. It's not for nothing that he's inspired so many folks in his own party and beyond. Senator Obama talks about making history, and he's made quite a bit of it already. There was a time when the mere invitation of an African-American citizen to dine at the White House was taken as an outrage and an insult in many quarters. Today is a world away from the cruel and prideful bigotry of that time, and good riddance. I can't wish my opponent luck, but I do wish him well.
Chris, I'm glad you brought that up, because that is quite a speech, and the dignity and the honor that he brings to that he brought to that kind of occasion was classic John McCain.
Well, it's why we care, and it's why people like you and I have spent our lives covering these guys, because at their best, they are something else. Something else.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.